just about returning after furlough, some of the things that you may find are challenging, things like that. So, first of all, I thought I'd just share a little bit about me. So, I'm a senior HR advisor at Norrie HR. I'm CIPD qualified. I've got a master's in personnel and development. I did my undergraduate in geography, which is a bit random. I've ended up in HR, but there you go. I've been working in HR for over 8 years. So I've worked for companies like the Co-op, I've worked for Peninsula, I worked for a company called Supportis, and now I'm here at Norrie. And then most importantly, I am the mother of two beautiful children, Elia and Henry. So I've included a little picture for you all to see. So today I'll talk about 20 minutes, hopefully not too long. I know people have a good grasp on furlough by this point, so I won't necessarily be sharing anything groundbreaking. So I plan to go over the following points. So go over basically the current guidelines, notice to return, so what employers need to do to get employees back into the workplace, some of the challenges of getting those employees back into the workplace, and what employers can do to prepare to return. And then I thought at the end we could have a group discussion, and then we can share operational difficulties businesses face, discuss solutions and any best practices. Peer-to-peer support is so important, and that's where these groups are literally worth their weight in gold. So I thought it'd be good to have a chat at the end. So the current guidelines, I'm sure everyone is aware by now, legally, furlough is an agreement between employer and employee, where two parties agree to suspend and temporarily amend some of the terms of the employment contract, mainly the obligation to attend work. So ideally, these arrangements should be in writing, but obviously everyone knows how quick furlough came into place. But if it's not in writing, customs and practice will still enforce basic furlough terms anyway. So far, 11.2 million jobs have been supported by the scheme since 2020. And as of March 2021, there are still 4.7 million on furlough. So 4 in around 10 employers are still using the furlough scheme. And obviously, we all know it was confirmed in the budget that furlough would be extended again, this time until September 2021. So we know furlough is going to be around for some time yet, and it's something we've still got to deal with. So as you can see from this slide, the amount that the government is going to pay to employers is going to go down. And I think that's, as you know, we all agree, they're trying to wean businesses off furlough and get people back into work, get the economy moving. So one of the main provisions is that employees still have to be paid 80%, but the employers can only claim 70% in July, 60% in August and September. So employees shouldn't be on full-time furlough, only receiving 70 or 60% of their wage. They should still be getting that full 80%, and that's the terms of, the new scheme. And obviously we can still claim employers' national insurance contributions and so on. So you can see there all the new terms and conditions. So now that lockdown is coming to an end, you've got Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak advising people it's time to get back into work. I'm not sure that their comments about people who've been working from home getting back to work have gone down well. But overall, it's clear that the message from the government is to get the economy moving. Getting businesses to open is the main way to do that, with the aim of getting people who are on furlough back into work. So employers need to give employees who are currently on furlough notice to return to work. So employers need to check the wording of any agreements that they've currently got. So in particular, if they've got any notice periods that they have agreed. You don't have to put your request in writing. You can tell employees verbally, get back into work. But obviously it might be best practice to put it into writing. And then in the absence of a written furlough agreement, employers can just give reasonable notice for their employees to return. So I would say a week's notice is more than reasonable, and really a couple of days is all you need to give. But that will depend on your business and the business situation that you're in. So I'll go now through some of the challenges that businesses might incur while they're getting people back into work. And later on in this presentation, like I said, we'll have a chance to go over some of the challenges that you've had and, discuss ways to overcome these issues. Oh. So self-isolation is obviously going to be an issue, and that's regardless of whether people have been on furlough or not. So businesses are going to need to come up with a contingency plan for employees going off for 2 weeks at a time at the last minute. So does your business have a solid overtime clause in their contract? Can you compel employees who are not isolating to work additional hours to cover for the shortfall? Do employees work on individual projects and can they be accessed by other employees? So if they have to leave at the last minute and someone has to pick up their work, is it in a shared space? Things like that. Childcare is obviously another issue. Hopefully this will be easier now that schools are open again. But you'll still have issues with individual schools that might have to close. So that might be single bubbles, isolating, or even the full school closing due to lack of staff. I know from personal experience that the before and after school club that my daughter uses, that actually went out of business in the first lockdown. So I had to scramble around at the last minute to find a before and after school club for her, which luckily I was able to do, but it's the type of childcare issue that people will be having. Obviously, remember when employees have time off childcare, it's considered to be time off for dependents. I know we're currently dealing with a case that we've inherited. An employer who had dismissed an employee for taking emergency childcare leave during the first lockdown. The employee's child had a disability, was in and out of school due to self-isolation and school closing to key workers, and she was subsequently dismissed. So the dismissal really was automatically unfair under the Employment Rights Act, and due to the child's disability, the employee might also have a claim for associated disability discrimination. So at the minute, part of our role is that we're trying to get a settlement for that business and that employee to get the situation sorted. So it's always advised to be careful when managing time off for dependents, regardless of COVID. Unused holiday will be another issue. So everyone wants to book time off now that they've returned to work. They've not seen friends and family for a long time, so we'll want to spend time with them. Public transport is going to become increasingly difficult. You might not be able to socially distance on public transport, so that might impact employees getting to and from work. And a lot of services have been cut back in local areas because of lockdown and COVID. Changes in personal circumstances. So some people may have been off since March and not back in since March 2020. Lots of things might have changed in their professional life, and this might impact whether or not they can attend work. So another challenge to consider might be an employee simply just refusing to attend work. So that might be for many different reasons, and the employer needs to find out and really get to the bottom of why it is that the employee is refusing to attend work. So the first thing to do is investigate. What is the reason the employee will not attend, and is there anything that can be done to encourage the employee to get back to work? It might be a good idea to get the employee to place their concerns in writing, and once the concerns are in writing, if needs be, the employee can then treat this as a grievance. Obviously, be aware of whistleblowing if the employee's concerns or refusal to attend work focus on health and safety concerns. Any subsequent disciplinary action for refusal to attend work could be considered unfair under the Employment Rights Act. There was a recent case surrounding this very issue. It was Rogers and Leeds laser cutting. And basically, the employee claimed that he'd been unfairly dismissed for saying he didn't feel safe in the workplace and that his refusal to attend work was protected under Section 100 D&E of the Employment Rights Act. So ultimately, in that case, the employee did lose because it was found that in reality, he'd actually gone AWOL. The reason he was off wasn't anything to do with health and safety concerns. The judge resigning on the case, though, did say cases such as this needed to be given careful consideration, and that refusal to attend work because of concerns around COVID could be considered as a protected absence. So, of course, the judge was very careful and did go on to say, dependent on the facts of each individual case. But it does show that tribunals will carefully consider employees' concerns about COVID in the workplace. And of course, if somebody is off sick, as normal, they need to follow the same absence reporting process as they have done before. So it is important that employers offer a safe work environment to employees to return to. Um, However, a safe work environment might in itself cause more operational difficulties for employers, which brings us on to social distancing. So social distancing has not come to an end. We're still expected to keep 2 meters away from colleagues. If they're not in your home bubble, then you need to keep your distance. So can employees work from home? I know that most employees who can work from home will have already been doing so and might not necessarily be on furlough. But if those returning from furlough can work from home, then get that set up. That might be a sensible option. Provide PPE, and then obviously carry out risk assessments to look at your workspace. If you're unable to implement social distancing due to the size of the work environment, then make sure that PPE is provided, and that it's appropriate PPE. So remember, hands, face, space. So plenty of hand washing, hand sanitising, ensure masks are provided, visors if possible. Can you use plastic screens to help people distance a bit more if they can't keep 2 meters away? All of those things that we've been seeing so much over the last year. Can you implement regular testing now? So companies are able to sign up and get testing kits for lateral flow tests. So again, can you encourage staff to do these? Um, and then if you are able to socially distance, then make sure as a business you are enforcing it and not just paying lip service to it. So failure to adhere to social distancing could result in fines under the Health and Safety Act. So I don't know if you're aware, the DWP in Leeds, they fell victim to this problem. So the Health and Safe Executive reported that the DWP did not take reasonably practical steps to ensure employees' health and safety. So during a health and safety visit, employees were pictured huddled together around a desk. More could have been done by management to reduce interaction with employees, and that's where the fines came from. They were able to socially distance. More could have been done. The management didn't do that, and that's what resulted in the fine. So the health and safety visit in this case was actually prompted by a whistleblower who was anxious about their safety within the workplace. So that brings us on to the next issue, which I think will probably be quite a big issue moving forward, and that's employee anxiety. So research by the Health Foundation has found that more than 2/3 of adults in the UK, so 69%, reported feeling somewhat or very worried about the effects of COVID-19. So while not all of these adults will, as a consequence, suffer from anxiety, the results clearly reflect the impact COVID is having on mental health in general. So employers need to be very careful how they manage employees with anxiety. So anxiety, in some instances, not in all of them, can be covered by the Equality Act. So to be covered by the Equality Act, the illness or condition needs to have a significant and detrimental impact on the employee's day-to-day life or last more than 12 months. So again, given how long COVID has been around and given that it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, COVID-related anxiety is likely to be covered by the Equality Act. But again, dependent on the circumstances and individual cases, so it's just something to consider. So if an employee is suffering from anxiety, the employee needs to talk to the employee about this anxiety. What is it about work compared to their home or their social interactions that is concerning them? So what can the business do to help? And you are able to question them. So what's the difference about coming to work and going to the shops? If you're able to go to the shops, why is that? Offer an individual risk assessment. So it could be that they're concerned about public transport and actually the office itself is fine, or the workplace itself it's fine. So coming up with options around that. Consider changing working patterns, again, if it's public transport. And if the employee is so ill that their anxiety, if the employee is so ill with their anxiety and reasonable adjustments aren't helping, then consider talking to a health professional, either the employee's GP or an occupational health professional, and these professionals might be able to help you understand the employee's condition better. Mind, the charity, also offers some really useful tips to help employers support employees with mental health issues, and they've actually got a whole COVID section, so that's always worth visiting and looking into that. And given how detrimental COVID has been on people's mental health, you might also decide that now is actually an excellent time to implement an employee assistance program if you haven't already got one, to give employees somewhere to go to talk to a counsellor if that's what they need. So, what can employees do to help employees return to work? So, I've already gone over most of the basic solutions. So, just really a recap of some of the ideas that have already been thrown about. So, things to consider before employees actually return. So, can you complete training? So, part of the terms of furlough is that you can ask employees to complete training while they're on furlough. You don't have to pay them any additional, it can still be at the 80%. It can be face to face, so you can ask them to come into the workplace, or it can be e-training. But if they've been off for a while, training might, help them get back into the work frame of mind, especially if they've not been back for so long. Think about financial implications as well as the operational concerns. So employers can still enforce holidays while employees are on furlough, and the employer can still claim 80% of the wages from the government. However, the employee must top up the additional 20%, so the employee is paid 100% for holidays. So, enforcing holidays can reduce operational difficulties of staff trying to cram all their leave in before the end of the year that they've accrued for all this time. And obviously, it can be much needed financial aid for companies who are struggling because of lockdown, who might have lost customers. Enforcing holidays, as always, it's got to be a careful balance. Employees will still want to have time off with family and friends who they've not seen for a year. So they're still going to want the time off. They might not want to use it during lockdown. So just be careful when you do use it. Can you consider flexible furlough? So flexi furloughs, part-time furlough really. So can employees work a week on, a week off, and then you spread in the social distancing as well because you've not got as many people in the workplace? Can you rota employees on for half of their usual weekly hours? So they're in every week but on reduced hours. So that will be especially helpful for businesses who need to drum up custom if they've lost customers due to lockdown. It's a way of holding on to the staff but still not paying out as many working hours. So discuss the return with employees themselves and talk to them about what hours you'll expect them to work. Employees may be able to provide solutions that you have never thought of. And really, employees are the ones who know your business best. So they might be able to offer you things that you hadn't thought of before. You may need to consider flexible working requests. So again, this is if people have had childcare issues or employees have had significant life-changing events during lockdown. I've included a video link here of our MD Amrita discussing flexible working. It's a really quick 2-minute hints and tips video, but it's worth watching. Normally, with flexible working, you've got 3 months in which to consider a flexible working request, but obviously I advise that you respond quicker if you want to get employees back into work and as soon as possible. And then, of course, all the health and safety implications. So, can people work varied hours, extend the working day to help social distancing? Plastic screens where appropriate, PPE, lateral flow tests, and then, like I say, consider getting that EAP for anxious employees or just employees whose mental health has suffered since being in lockdown. I can't stress enough, if you can enforce social distancing, make sure you do. Because otherwise you might end up with fines from the health and safety executive. And really, that brings us to the end of the slides. There's not much more I can put into slides to tell people that, you don't already know. So I was hoping now that we could just have a group discussion and go through and share the issues that you're having as a company. How are you going to overcome those issues? Put it out to everybody else how they would overcome those issues and go from there, if that's okay. So bear with me.
So does anybody like to kick off a discussion? I mean, does anybody want to talk to us about any personal experiences that you've had of furlough, any best practice?
I think my biggest concern is the them and us culture that might be created when the furlough employees come back, because in our situation we've had people who have been on the front line during the COVID process, and then others that have had to be furloughed, and it's that reintegration of the guys that have been working through this period where they're probably fatigued, probably feel a bit resentful, and all of that kind of stuff. And then the furlough guys coming back where they're keen, but we need to be cognizant that they might forget their password, how to navigate systems and all of that. So we're trying to introduce a keep in touch program. So rather than come back on bang on day one, I think it's great advice, you know, give them notice, but actually it's the notice to a keep in touch day. So we're expecting you back. First day, actually, it'll only be a couple of hours because you'll have a chat with your line manager. They'll inform you as to what's been happening for the time that you've been away. Also do a risk assessment on that, and then maybe meet one or two colleagues so they get an idea of what's happened, assess the tone, and then it'll be an opportunity for the furloughed employee to maybe share what they've been going through, because I've spoken to some of the furlough people who feel guilty that they aren't there with their colleagues on the front line as well. So I think the approach we're trying to take is this can't be transactional. We've got to use our emotional intelligence with this, because it can be quite sensitive and it can set relationships back quite a bit if we're not careful.
Yeah, I agree. It's similar to people coming off maternity leave, really. When you've been out of the business for that massive amount of time, those keep in touch days are really important. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think that was the basis of our kind of thoughts of how we reintegrate and not do this big bang thing.
Yeah,
I think you can get people that are obviously feeling very apprehensive, you know, if they've been out of the workplace for so long. So in some respects, it's maybe a bit like starting a new job, really.
Can I just add to that as well? We did a webinar a few weeks ago and we talked about reinducting people back in. So even starters that have started during lockdown, and some people haven't even been in the office at all. And then you've got people that have been on furlough for so long. So you almost have to reinduct them back into the business and, you know, introduce them to everyone again. And this is your password. This is how you navigate this system. And I think it would, you know, show them around and what all the social distancing measures that you've put in the office, because it's going to be different for a few months yet anyway. So we were talking about doing that.
Yeah, you could possibly do some of that online as well, couldn't you? And I know it's completely different, but when my daughter went back to school, they'd sort of changed the classrooms around, and there's quite a lot of messages that they were sending out before all the kids went back about, oh, you know, are you worried about coming back, and let us know if you do, and this, that and the other. And by the way, here's what your classroom looks like now. So it wasn't a massive shock when they went back in on that first day.
Yeah.
Has anyone got any burning questions that they would like to ask?
I've got.
I have one.
Oh, sorry.
I just have a quick one.
Oh, go on, Claire.
How much was the fine? What the DWP received?
It doesn't say. So at the end of my presentation, I've put the news article where I've got the information from. But I don't think they release that kind of information.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Okay.
So we've started bringing people back recently. Like everybody, we're going to have very few people that are actually on furlough. So we've got that kind of anxiety that we've been trying to deal with of people trying to come back before now. So I think we've kind of got that. Obviously it's individual, but we've also got like PPE, things like that, and temperature checking within the office locations when we can go back to the offices. But where do we stand with people that refuse to have the temperature checked? Because obviously it's people don't have symptoms, but potentially could be carrying it, and high temperature. You would expect people to be able to tell it to have a high temperature, but some people can't because they might naturally be quite hot.
So you've got to be careful again of things like the menopause, because that can cause high temperatures. So you don't want to be seen to be discriminating against employees. It's not as rigorous as the refusing to have a vaccine. We all know you cannot force someone to have a vaccine and do something to their body that they don't want to do because they've got that bodily integrity. But a temperature check isn't that. Is it a forehead check?
Yeah, so it's just like those little gun things, and you don't write it down anywhere. We just basically show whoever's taken it. So like in our office, I do ours, and I just show them it and go, fab. Next, please. So we don't write it down. There's no risk of data getting lost somewhere or recording of that data. So yeah, we've had some people that are like, I don't want you to take my temperature. It's intrusive.
Yeah.
But then if you go to hairdressers or dentists or doctors, they tend to do it there as well. So
it would be failure to follow a reasonable management request. You have a duty of care under the Health and Safety Act and in general to make sure that staff are safe, and checking somebody's temperature is not intrusive. So it would be failure to follow a reasonable management request. So as with any misconduct, you would investigate, well, why is it? Why is that the case? And if somebody, for example, I use the menopause as an example, say, well, actually, I was having a hot flush because of the menopause. I just needed 10 minutes to stand outside, cool down, and then I could come back in. So it's all of those things that you need to investigate. And then, as again, with misconduct, you would then decide, do I take it further? Do I issue a letter of concern? And go from there.
Cool.
Would that be the same for, what about testing? If they want to enforce weekly COVID tests, would that be the same if people refuse for that?
Yep, because it's not an injection. It's not something that physically alters your bodily integrity. So again, it would be a reasonable management instruction. And you've got to decide as a business how far you want to take that. If all of your employees are refusing and you send them all home, suspend them on full pay for medical grounds, you're going to have no one in the office. So it depends how far you take it as a business. But yes, again, it would be fairly to follow a reasonable management instruction, which it is. It's a reasonable request.
Yeah, and would you advise for that, say, for example, we have a lot of clients that are manufacturing, so they have loads of people, obviously, in a big warehouse, and they've had people in the past that have refused because they don't want to be the person that's carrying no symptoms, and then they have to go and isolate for 2 weeks. Would you advise maybe like putting together like a health and safety statement that they have to sign to say that this is the procedure, we're going to test you every week? If you've got a problem, you need to...
Yeah, you need to implement a policy. So put it as a HR policy. If it is a change to terms and conditions, give reasonable notice that that's what will be happening. But again, under that duty of care, you are able to implement those types of policies.
Okay, perfect.
And I know somebody's asked about the no jab, no job. So the jab is different because it does, if you have an injection, it does alter your body, is the only way to describe it. So I think it was back in the 1800s, so 1850s, I think, if I can remember off the top of my head, it was mandatory that everybody had to have a vaccine. So if you were under the age of 14, you had to legally have a vaccine for smallpox. And that's when the anti-vax movement actually started. People were saying, don't want to do this. You're forcing me to do something with my children and with my children's body that I don't want to do. Obviously, vaccines then were much more risky. We didn't have the information about allergies and things like that. So vaccines weren't that safe. They were safer than smallpox, but it still caused problems. So then it was legislated that people could conscientiously object, and that's when conscientious objection first entered British law, basically. So from then, you've had the Human Rights Act that have gone through and said, yep, you've got the right to your own bodily integrity. You cannot be forced to do something with your body that you don't want to do. And really, that's because that's such a hefty piece of law, you can't then legislate or put into an employment contract that somebody has to do something with their body that they don't want. So that's why you can't force someone to have a vaccine.
What if it for example, if you're an NHS worker, healthcare, and you kind of not need, but it would be a risk for everybody else if you didn't have it?
So you can have a policy that says if you unreasonably refuse to have a vaccine, you might face disciplinary action. So you can't be forced, the policy itself cannot force you to have the injection, but you can have a policy that says, well, actually, if you don't reasonably comply, we might take disciplinary action. And I think that will be hard to implement because people have been working on the front line without having these injections for so long. Can you put other things in place? So social distancing, PPE, they've been effective so far. Why is one person not having the vaccine going to cause such a massive risk that they need to be dismissed? So it's all of those things that you need to consider. But technically, yes, you could dismiss someone who refused to have a vaccine, but you need to have really sort of strong life and death consequences of them not doing so.
I had a question that I wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? It's regarding flexible furlough. So in our flexible furlough letters, we have put down, if there is no work available, we'll just notify you in writing and then you'll remain on furlough for the week. The reason why we put that in is we didn't want to be writing every time they were working on flexible furlough and every time they were on fully furlough. Is that enough? Is that okay? Was that the right thing to, yeah, as
long as you've got a clear policy and employees can't say, I don't know what's going on, then that's fine. And like I say, it's about being reasonable. Have you given reasonable notice? And are you doing the best by the employee to keep them in the business? Is it, have you worked within a practicable way in which to enable that, really?
And from a HMRC point of view, obviously we've got the letters as evidence, and that should be enough, isn't it? We've clearly stated that if there is no work, you will remain on fully furlough and you will be notified in writing via email. Again, when we need you back in on flexible furlough, we just tell them again in writing, and that's enough. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Has anyone got any other questions?
I've got a question on if someone refuses to come to work while it's on furlough, like a meeting or training, which is one of the clauses we have on the letter of the agreement, that they need to attend training or come to work. Are we okay to remove them from furlough? Because they're like, some of them have gone to home countries. I mean, that's not the main reason why furlough is there. Or they've gone somewhere, maybe Manchester, they can't come to work or something like that.
As long as you've given them reasonable notice in which to attend work, you've not rang them up and said, you need to be in work in 15 minutes.
Oh, no. Enough notice, which we expect on the letters.
Then, yes, you can remove the payment. It is an absence. It's not being available for work. And then you would revert to your company absence policies.
Anyone got anything else? No? Okay. Lizzie, is the presentation available to share with people if they require it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So if you bear with me, I'll just share my screen because I've got some other bits to show you towards the end. So there's all my contact information, so I've popped it on there for everybody. But thank you very much for attending today. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you to HR Recruit for actually asking me to present. I've really enjoyed it. So there's all my contact details, and as a side note, if anyone is interested in Norris services, we do offer a pay-as-you-go package, which is just £1 a minute. And the package is aimed at sort of standalone HR professionals who may need a second opinion on a case, There's no retainer fee, no insurance, just basic pay-as-you-go advice. So if you do think you want to have a look, just have a look on the internet, or just whiz me an email. And then, as promised as well, there's all the links to everything that I've discussed today. So if you do want to do any more reading or Googling, that will give you a starting point.
Okay, Lizzie, so perhaps maybe the best thing is if you can send the presentation to myself.
Yes.
And then what I will do this afternoon is I will send an email to everybody that's registered, which obviously you guys will get a copy.
Yeah.
And what I will do as well is I'll put a post on LinkedIn. So if you wouldn't mind, if you can, in the email, I'll put a link to the LinkedIn post. If you can respond to the LinkedIn post to say that you'd like a copy of the slides, what I'll do is I'll then send you the slides, because the slides have obviously got the content in, but they've also got Lizzie's contact details in and the extra information for you, you know, if it's beneficial. The other thing as well that we have got, and it's not HR Recruit, well, it's not for HR Recruit, it's for HR professionals. And I know that a couple of you are already in it, is we've got a Guild app. And I'll put that into the email as well. And it's a networking group, basically, that for HR professionals. Now, we only started it probably about 6-8 weeks ago. We've got around 160 people that are in it, but it's actually been really successful. So a lot of people are putting questions in there. You know, for example, can anyone, you know, give me any feedback on a good HR system? And other people are saying, oh, yeah, we use this. And, you know, so there's a lot of question and answers between sort of HR people, so that might be really useful. And yeah, in the email I'll put that we've got quite a few boardrooms planned for the next month, so I'll put those in the email as well. You know, and if anybody is looking to recruit either HR or finance or accountancy, then you know, we do have those businesses within the group as well. So thank you very much. Thanks very much for joining. I hope everybody has a lovely Easter, and I'll send that to everybody this afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.